Welcome to the Village Green, NBTV show on the environment in Newport Beach. And as Monty Python used to say, now for something a little different. We're going to have some young voices today, and hopefully what they say will be of interest to those of us who are involved in environmental issues. Well, I'm here with special guests. These are, I have to confess, one of them is my granddaughter, so she had to come. And she was nice enough to bring a friend. And why don't you guys introduce yourselves, tell me name and where you're going to school?
I'm Sylvie Henry. I am going to be a senior at Laguna Beach High School this year.
My name's Cleo Washer, and I will also be a senior in high school at Laguna Beach this year.
So they've got a lot on their table. They're looking at colleges. I know Cleo's doing water polo.
I do soccer.
Soccer. So they're very, very busy. But there are some existential issues out there, particularly involving the environment. So just to start off, are there any major issues that say, I know you don't go to bed every night thinking, but that you think are really critically important that we deal with? Let's start with you, Cleo.
I mean, global warming is the big talk of the town. I feel like everyone should be worried about it and how it's affecting our oceans and our air and our whole world. I feel like we're getting to the point where it's going to be irreversible and we have to do something.
All right. Sylvie?
Yeah, it's the same with Cleo. I think that our reliance on fossil fuels is definitely reaching the point where we'll probably not be able to turn back. And I think that starting infrastructure on renewable energy and things like that to help combat climate change is the most necessary thing at this point for our future.
Okay, right there I want to stop things. And when I was their age, if you had asked me this question, I would have said, huh? The fact that you even talk about infrastructure to me is very impressive. It shows that you're much more aware. When I was in high school, I went to school, I rode my horse, and I surfed, and that's about it. And you guys are already, I know because you do a lot of community service, you're already into other things. So you are aware of climate change. So are there any specific areas of climate change that particularly concern you? Sylvie?
Well, yeah, I think that just rising temperature recently, across the U.S., every time you look in the news, it's the highest temperatures recorded this year. And I think that, I read news about the glaciers melting and all that. I think just the rising heat and the fact that scientists have been telling us for years that we're reaching a point of no return, I think that really scares us. And especially as, we're about to turn 18. We haven't been given the chance to vote yet, but having leaders that find that important for our future too, I think is scary and very important.
Cleo, any other issues besides within global warming, which is of course the big picture?
Yeah. This last year, I took a marine ecology class where I learned a lot about how global warming is affecting our oceans, and it's really scary, honestly, about how all this CO2 is getting absorbed into our oceans, causing a bunch of ocean acidification that's destroying our coral reefs, which doesn't seem like it would majorly affect us on land, but it will, and it is. And that's just been really scary. And the amount of attention, obviously there's attention, but not necessarily anything being done to prevent it. And that is something that has been on my mind.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues for me, and I think for everybody, is that it's such a big problem, but until recently, we haven't really seen very many effects. And so there's always another emergency to deal with. And you're like, well, we'll deal with that one. But right now, we've got to do this.
Yeah.
And yet, as I said, a lot of people say we've reached a tipping point. A lot of people say we're near the tipping point. So what about sea level rise?
Sea level rise?
I mean, you guys are coastal kids, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a problem. I feel a bunch of these things that are happening are don't necessarily, we don't see them affecting us now, but in the future it will definitely be a problem. And I mean, it's definitely on my mind, but I don't necessarily know a lot about it.
It's all right.
But it's definitely a problem that's going to be, I feel getting worse and worse over the future.
Yeah, so I just think, just seeing studies about how towns will probably be underwater, especially the islands right now, and how they're changing their infrastructure to help adapt to the rising sea levels. I think that's important because if we're not doing something to change the rising sea levels, you might as well adapt to the environment that is going to surround you soon. So yeah, and especially with this rising sea level that comes from, the higher temperatures because the glaciers are melting and
They are.
the
They are
ocean's
melting.
rising. And
You said if I think if Greenland melted, it
Yeah.
it would be a 20-foot rise. That's how much ice there is there. So, 20 feet. That would put me on waterfront property. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a good thing. The house you'll inherit will be worth a whole lot more. All right. What about plastic?
Plastic, yeah. So it's really interesting, especially coming from Laguna, because they did put a plastic ban for our restaurants. I mean, it hasn't really fully gone into place yet. Like I get paper straws occasionally, but yeah, plastic is it's probably the worst part of our economy, all the microplastics that just fill up and the pollution, and it's like we've created so much at this point. You think, how can we clean this up now? Even if we do switch to another material, all that plastic isn't going to decompose for thousands of years. And so it's kind of just, you feel a little hopeless when you think about plastic, because the cost that it would make to start making things in non-plastic is just, it's too much for the people that are, manufacturing plastics. So
Anything to add to that, Cleo?
Yeah, I would say that, I always talk about our ocean, but it's all goes into our ocean. Living right next door, I go on my paddleboard once a week and I see plastic bottles everywhere and no one to clean it up. Everyone just is like, oh, that's terrible, but no one cleans it up. And obviously it's endangering our animals in the ocean, but it's also just affecting everyone else. And recycling, people don't recycle as much as they should, or they don't do it properly, and I just feel like everything, since it's so cheap to produce plastic and have everything be plastic, that we're just having a mass production that's not necessary when we could be using paper or aluminum. That's definitely probably not as bad, but or just be
Well, they're easier to recycle. For example,
exactly.
Water, I get frustrated because every meeting I go to, it seems like they have plastic water bottles. And they're going, yeah, guys, you can get water in cans, and cans are much more recyclable than plastic, so there are options. So let's talk a bit about what to do. And I'm a big believer in individual action myself. I know that we need political action to make the big changes, but I'm always saying, gee, I use the example, if say 10% of us in California drove 10 miles less a week, that's probably a gallon of gas at the end of the month, But 10% in California, that would still be a lot of drivers, and that would be a lot of gas. So we can get more people to do these things. So what sort of things do you or your family do that when you're really thinking about it?
Well, I know that my mom just got a new car, and it's half electric, and she's been using that a lot. I know you have an electric car, so that was very important for her. She really wanted to have something electric with all that driving and gas. We've been really trying to educate ourselves on recycling and how to recycle properly, but those are the major steps my family have taken.
Okay, Sylvie?
yeah, like Cleo said, every new car that we get, my dad always tries to get an electric one. That's very important to him. It's also very important that now that the trolley comes up, that we use public transportation.
Now, I love that about Laguna, because I know just from watching Cleo and my grandsons that you use it a lot. If you're going to the beach or something, another beach, you hop on the trolley, and you don't have to worry about parking, and you
don't have to worry about paying.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. Yeah, no, that's totally a game changer. And I really wish that they would teach us a little bit more about how we recycle in the U.S. because, sometimes a few years ago, when we found out that, China would stop buying our recycling and we didn't really know where to put it, that created a huge problem. And so I think that personally, if we are going to recycle, I think there needs to be more transparency about where it's going, because I feel like a lot of it does end up in landfills, and all the individual effort you're making gets undone by the systems that you're doing it for.
Yeah,
so.
we can certainly improve there. Cleo, anything else? So what about just small things? Do you think about turning off the light when you leave a room?
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of cool to see now, in new houses built, a lot of lights have timers on them. So even if you do forget, they'll turn off automatically, and it's not dependent on that. And Yeah, and I think like water, obviously we live in California, there's always droughts. That's a very important thing. And I think people, like a lot of people that live by the beach have outdoor showers, you know, where they can just rinse off really quick. There's outdoor showers at the beach. I mean, just like being conscious about making those things kind of shorter.
Yeah, I think the littlest things have the biggest impacts because it tends to be like people don't pay attention to them, like just leaving the light on overnight. It may be on accident, but it still affects, or having a drain that leaks the whole day, but it's just like a tiny drop that will just add up and add up until you change it. And that's definitely something my family and I have been trying to pay attention towards. Like, I am guilty of accidentally leaving the light on, and it is a problem my mom and I definitely get into because I don't want to leave the light on. I know it's gonna, I mean, a lot of people leave their light on, and I'm just adding to the problem, you know? So I've definitely been keeping that in mind recently.
Yeah, I can remember driving at night, and I'll see houses, and you go, every light in the house is on. It's just blazing.
Yeah.
You think you can't be in every room, really? You need all that electricity. All right, so you're doing some things now. Let's talk about the future, though, because a lot of what you're talking about, recycling, one reason we've been slow to recycle properly is because a lot of people, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's just easier to throw it all in one bin
Yeah.
and have them take it to the MRF and sort it out and not take any time about it. So that's always an issue. We have to change hearts and minds always. That's a struggle. There's a political struggle. But so, do you see any role for yourself in the future involving it in this besides your, which I'm not minimizing all your individual actions and that sort of thing?
I mean, at our school, especially since there is a plastic ban in Laguna Beach, I've been trying to make our school plastic free. Like, we sell plastic water bottles in the vending machines, but we could easily put aluminum cans of water or even like paper like box waters in there, and or paper straws, anything in our cafeteria. Plastic utensils could be wooden utensils. And I just think, especially at school, a lot of kids leave their trash out and like birds take it, or that gets carried into the ocean or gets untreated. And I think if it was less plastic, it would have less harm to our environment. But I also think that recycling is a problem only, and part of it is because sometimes it's not an option. You see trash cans around Laguna Beach and they're just one bin, you know? You just throw everything in there. I know no one's going to go through it and recycle it unless someone's collecting cans, you know, to turn in. But I think that Laguna Beach and just other cities around in Orange County could really work on having 2 trash cans, one for recycling and one for waste.
Okay. Sylvie?
Yeah, so apart from big picture, I know individual actions in the future for myself will definitely be efforted in like making other people aware of what they need to do recycling wise, water wise. But I think that a lot of it needs to be advocated to the people that like make our laws and actually have power for our future. I mean, that's the most important thing for me, because I think individual efforts do have a lot of effect, but they don't really have the same lasting effect as they would if they were written into law, or if they were like examples of what other people in the environment or other people in the community are doing for their environment. You know, I think that they just need a better example set and maybe more rules to keep them in line for recycling wise.
Cleo, any thoughts in terms of your future and how involved you might be in any particular issue?
I mean, definitely turning the lights off. Just paying more attention to it. I think just getting other people, friends, family, to understand that the little things do help and that this is going to be a problem and it's affecting us, you know? Like, we are going to have to live with this, going to have to bring new generations into this, and if we don't do anything, it starts with us, you know? And if a bunch of people realize how much of a problem it is, it will go into law, and it should go into law and make things more apparent. And
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I mean, obviously voting is important,
Mm-hmm.
but you want to get everybody to vote your way.
yeah,
So, have you thought about speaking at a city council meeting, or have you thought about writing to anybody on these, or is that something you might consider in the future in terms of trying to make change?
I mean, being freshly 18, voting is something that I can do now, which is very exciting. And I was thinking the other day about like what would I want for myself, for our country, and I would 100% go and talk and say my opinions, try to get people to see how much of a problem this climate change, global warming, our oceans, like especially it being so close, I feel like it's going to affect us the most once it gets to a point of no return, that we really need to start paying attention to it. And I think a bunch of people on city council or the government, wherever, they are old enough to kind of turn a blind eye because it's not necessarily going to be really affecting them in the future, but it's us who it will in our generations. And yeah, I would definitely.
Sylvie?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Cleo there. And I think it's also just very important to like make sure our voices are loud, because even though, I mean, I think our generation sees this as the forefront of one of our problems in the future. Like, it's impeding, it's like we're seeing its effects now. Like, it's always been said, you know, we'll see how this affects it years in the future, but we are years in the future and we're seeing the effects, and it's and all the natural disasters. And yeah, I think that for our future, like, I think young people totally need to advocate more, and I think they need to be louder with their voices if they want to be heard, because like it's very easy to push issues down to the bottom and deal with them later, but like because this is an issue that is so dire and that we need change for right now, like I think that, you know, our future depends on our generation and us like advocating and taking a stand, because, you know, it takes there's an age minimum to like get into office and all that, and it takes years to do that. And I think that if we advocate loud enough and enough times about what we need and what we want for our future, I feel like that could probably, you know, make a change.
Would either of you consider running for office at some point?
I have considered going into political science. I think it's interesting, and I think it's like the forefront of our, like, it's the backbone of our country. It's how we get things done. It's how the laws are made. But I also am discouraged just by corruption and by politicians. Like, I think that there are other ways to get things done, and if I didn't have to go into politics to get those things done, I would probably choose that path.
Cleo?
I mean, I've definitely have considered it. I mean, you being my role model, of course, could follow in her footsteps. But, I mean, I hope it doesn't get to the point where I'm like, I have to really go and change. I mean, I will speak at city council meetings. I hope I'm heard, but I hope it doesn't get to the point where I'm like, okay, it's up to me. Like, I've got to do this myself.
Well, I will tell you my own experience was very similar to yours. I kept saying in this particular case, are you going to run? Are you going to run? Are you going to run? Because I didn't like the political process.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the whole thing. You have to raise money. You have to do this and that. And it was just like, but finally there was nobody else. And it was my husband, when I'm going, oh, I don't know what to do. And he said, but you get to vote. In other words, you get to really have an influence. And that was, for me, that was, so it may come to that. At some point, just go, well, I'm not happy with what I see going on up there, so I'm going to put my hat in the ring. Yeah. I've enjoyed this. I tell you that Cleo and I talk a lot about things, but we never don't talk about these sort of things. I was very surprised and pleased from both of you how much you have thought about it and how much you know about it. I think that's impressive, and I hope you will continue and make your voices heard and even louder, because I know from being on council, when we had young people come, particularly young people who were informed about the issues, it really struck a note. We really, most of us didn't want to disappoint them and just, you know, shove them off the way that too many things get shoved off. So you really can make a difference, I assure you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to know. I mean, I think that telling kids our age like what they can do to really help, I mean, I think everyone thinks of it as a problem, but they don't necessarily know how to help. I mean, there's of course the little things, but just using their voice, like everyone should agree that this is a problem, but I think a big question is, what do we do?
Yeah.
And you saying that kids our age can really make a difference, come to these meetings, speak our truth, is definitely important.
Well, and I just think that, you know, it's a cliche in a sense, but it's very true, is think globally, act locally. So you are considering it, but we can't necessarily influence at this point what China's doing, say. Yeah. But we can influence what Laguna Beach is doing, or Newport Beach is doing, or Orange County is doing, or even California, say. And so you take those steps. Well, Thank you so much for taking some time
Yeah,
out of your
thank
day
you.
and go enjoy the beach. We had a miscommunication about time. He was supposed to be part of we were supposed to be a trio instead of a duo, but we will get some questions. So my question to you is, in terms of the environment, are there issues that you think about and are concerned about in particular?
One of the biggest issues to me is really rising sea levels and rising ocean temperatures. I'm a huge advocate for marine life. I'm a scuba diver. I'm a surfer. So the ocean is really a big part of my lifestyle. And also just where I live, I know Newport Beach is really close to the ocean, and rising ocean levels is a big threat to our community in general, whether it's islands flooding or even eventually the peninsula going to be underwater.
Yeah, your house. You may be.
That's it.
You're on the flat part.
I am on the
I
flat
was
part,
just saying, I'm in Corona, Mars, so I don't have to worry for quite some time. But you and your family will have to pay attention. Okay, so in terms of sea level rise, any issues in particular, any actions that you'd like to see that or things that you do?
I mean, for me, it's kind of the simple stuff of, hey, let's try and find a cleaner solution to everything. If there's the little steps that we can take in just everyday lifestyle of, hey, maybe not throw that trash in the trash can when it can go be recycled so it's not burning off, putting more CO2 in the air and heating up the oceans. Just the little things every single household can do that me and my family have been trying to do, with more recycling, using the green bins that the city has given us, and just trying to minimize waste, minimize burning off, and minimize the effect on our environment.
Okay, so at your school, is there any activity that's relevant?
At our school, we're trying to become zero waste. We have a recycling program where we take bottles and cans and go drop them off and exchange for money, and then support a local charity, I believe. I believe it's called Recycleholics.
That's cute.
Yeah. But yeah, they do good work up there and try to minimize the impact that we have.
So what specific things do you and your family do?
From my mom is running a business out of the house next door.
We interviewed her, and she
Yeah.
talked about the packaging and things that she's tried to
the
work on.
packaging, trying to maximize recycling if we can, try and use reusable materials. I mean, growing up through school, I came to school with metal containers for lunch, reusable, never plastic. And then try and recycle as much as possible, and yeah, really try and minimize the amount of waste we create.
Right. So you're taking your individual action very seriously,
Yeah,
which is
right.
I was saying earlier, I'm a big believer in that. If we all did small things, it become a big
Yeah.
thing. But the bigger issues still need political action and that sort of thing. And have you contacted ever an elected official or spoken in front of a group or anything to try to affect some of your ideas?
I really haven't. I've actually been working on this project called the Healthy Periods Initiative, which is helping people out of Uganda, or young girls in Uganda, get sanitary supplies. So that's been my main focus for philanthropy, but the individual action is where I've been focusing the most.
Well, that's an interesting project and certainly worthwhile. I'm always interested to see what the vast range of community service activities people do. For the future, what do you see? Do you see yourself playing a role? Do you see yourself expanding your role in any way in terms of trying to deal with this particularly sea level rise?
I mean, I would love to see myself right now. My goal is to get through high school. But
And that's very understandable.
But yeah, as I get older, I mean, that's a huge asset that we have, living so close to the beach, and I would hate to lose that. I mean, I've lived there my whole life. That's all I've known, and it's so beautiful, and to lose that would be detrimental to me. So yeah, if it continues to become a real problem and continues to grow, I do see myself taking action in some sort.
Okay. Do you see yourself becoming involved politically?
I'm not sure. I could see myself becoming involved politically. I could also see myself not becoming involved politically. So
Everybody has a very sort of, I don't know, about politics. But that is where a lot of the big decisions are made, and we do need people who care. What about voting? You'll be voting eventually.
I will be voting, what is it? I think it's the next presidential cycle I get one. Yeah.
So, and do you see yourself as, just to say, as an individual voter, speaking at, say, a council meeting or in front of or writing to your representatives? I mean, how active a voter do you, I mean, just voting is important, but do you see yourself going beyond that in terms of action?
I could see myself going beyond that in terms of action, if there's a plan that I really I support and will help a cause, or if it really goes against something I believe in, yeah, I could see myself taking action due to the fact that, I mean, that's my life. That's at risk.
Yes, okay. Well, so sea level rise, obviously global warming is a huge part of that. And I know that we've talked before about this, trying to get more students involved
Yeah.
because I think that you're the ones that are going to be impacted.
For
And
sure.
so it's great to see you taking those steps, and the two young women we talked to earlier are involved in issues and everything. So thank you for taking the time to share. And I'm sorry that we miscommunicated
I'm
about the
sorry.
time.
That's completely on me.
That happens. And that's our show. Interesting voices, interesting future. Until next time, let's all work on making our village green.